Hello you, it's me, with less hair. This is a pretty short book I'm going to talk about with you today, and it's I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Reid. It's told from the point of view of a woman on a road trip with her partner to visit his parents at a childhood home. But all the while she's dogged by this question in her mind that she's considering ending things, breaking it off with him, and she's weighing that up over the course of the book. There's a lot of unusual and meaningful conversation, and flashbacks to memories and nightmares they have, and secrets the protagonist has been keeping about a strange mystery caller in the middle of the night. Besides that, there really isn't much I can say about this book without completely spoiling it for you. I was thinking about what genre this book fits into, and it is a very psychological thriller. It manages to create this atmosphere of unease and tension and confused, nauseous fear, as you constantly struggle to figure out what the hell is going on and second-guessing yourself at every turn. This book made very little sense for me until right at the end, but I was completely sucked in by the atmosphere, the scene building, and the really weird dialogue as I was trying to figure out what was happening. The last things I can really tell you about this book before getting into the spoiler bits are: A, if you can, read this book with somebody else or as part of a reading group, because you will all pick up on very different things and have very different ideas about what's going on as it's happening. There are so many ways to interpret a lot of this book, and I feel like you'd get a heck of a lot out of discussion. Secondly, or B, this book is intended to be read twice. It's short, that's not an issue, it's not even 200 pages long. And the second time round is intended to hit different, not in a I know what's happening way, but you pick up more, you read it, and you're like, oh my god, this means this. Oh my god, that means that. The rest of this is going to be very spoilery because I want to talk about the meaning of things and what I thought was possibly going on as I was reading it. The general style, layout of the book, things that totally probably went over my head because this book is just crazy. Please don't continue watching this review if you haven't read the book but would really like to read the book, because this book relies so heavily on you having an oh shit moment right at the end and the smack in the face of realization, and this review will ruin that. But I feel like some people are going to have clicked on this review because they were like, I don't know what I just read, let's see what this hairy man on YouTube thinks. So initially, I'm going to put this down. I thought the theme of the book, at least for the first half, was about a sense of obligation and not being alone. The pressure not to be alone. To commit to somebody based on the 10% of time that you're happy with them. The main character says that she's been thinking of ending things for a while, and I felt like this book was going to be her weighing up and deciding whether that was a rational way to be thinking. She mentions a lot of tension between herself and her partner, but then refers to positive qualities that he has, and constantly dismisses her thoughts of breaking up again and again and again, finding excuses. I think that's quite realistic, and I feel like this book was going to be an exploration of that feeling within a relationship, of feeling trapped, but at the same time, simultaneously, that the problem lies with you. This is not what the book is about, probably, but as I said, it's a book that has you formulating theories over and over and over. This was even fed into later in the book when the main character has an interaction at the Dairy Queen and somebody behind the counter says, I'm worried about you. You don't have to be here, you know. You can go. So I had a lot of theories about obligation that were based on stuff that was happening in the book that I feel were pretty well founded as I was reading. Between each of the chapters, though, chapter-type things, there are passages of text which are two people speaking at a crime scene, looking at a body, saying, what a tragedy, whoever saw it coming. And I feel like it's painted that way initially to make you think that something horrible has happened in the aftermath of the breakup, but that's very quickly ripped away. They get to his parents' house, and disclaimer, I haven't seen the movie yet. But I was surprised at how little time was spent at the parents' house, considering it's like 100% of the trailer. The parents of Jake, her partner, that we're introduced to are very strange. They talk about a brother that Jake had with serious mental illness. So our main character starts to second-guess herself more and more. Guilt comes into play. Her decision's affected when she figures out why he is like he is. I did think while I was reading it that Jake's spiel about having a brother with mental illness may have been sort of a asking for a friend thing, and he's talking about himself in third person. They leave together, visit the school he used to attend, and the protagonist is forced into an almost horror movie confrontation with the school's janitor, who she hears stalking her, sees through the window, crawling on his belly along the floor. It's a really intense ending to the book, and the whole last third of the book is like, what's going on? So what this book actually factually is about is suicide. At the end of the book, we find out that Jake has died at the school and left notes by his body for the crime scene investigators to discover. We find out that the protagonist is not real and she's an alternate identity or a construct within the mind of Jake. He bases the image of her on a girl he saw once at a trivia night, which makes you feel like the whole first half of the book is a what-if scenario, where he paints a picture of what could have happened if they'd ever dated. But initially, I was unsure of the reason that this construct existed. Was the protagonist a personality that came about because of Jake's obsession with this woman and his overthinking? Or is she part of a deliberately constructed thought experiment of Jake's? And he's using these compartmentalized characters to examine himself objectively and answer the question, do I take my own life? The whole book seems to be him using a what-if scenario to decide this, but I was a bit unsure of the order things were happening in. Either way, the titular statement, I'm thinking about ending things, you fully believe that it's about the relationship between Jake and the protagonist, but actually it's about Jake's life the whole time. So the janitor in the last act was clearly Jake, and I was unsure whether the situation was. Jake, as a young guy, has built an idea of a future as a lonely janitor if he were to ever lose his partner and end his life in fear of this, or he's an old man and he's lonely and he kills himself because the what-if scenario never happened. This book is very difficult to talk about. And then on top of that, right at the end, where Jake and the main character pull the metaphorical trigger together, was that because the protagonist became aware that she was a construct in the mind of Jake and not a real human, or because all the aspects of Jake's personality were finally in agreement about what they should do? So a lot of these thoughts I had were after the book, after I finished reading it, in like the week after, where I was just thinking about it and thinking about it. It drops a lot of hints that Jake is suffering from multiple personality disorder, but also that Jake is aware of the multiple personalities inside him. When talking about his quiz team, he says, there are many of us, but we aren't like any other team. We play under the same name and it creates the illusion of oneness, which I think is too perfect to be a trivial throwaway line. And I think you can rephrase the question, is he ill or is this a thought experiment, as, is the text found next to his body what's going on in his head and the thought experiment put onto paper? Or are the notes an attempt on his part to understand his MPD in the lead up to his decision? And I think my honest answer to that one is I don't know even now. There are a lot of metaphors in this book for being trapped, for having limited social interaction. There are lots of cramped rooms, shut doors, doors lockable only from the inside, signifying somebody deliberately cutting themselves off from other people, him being found in a cupboard at the end. The basement in his family home that he dismisses as unimportant and little more than a hole in the ground, I think is indicative of his mental state. And time spent with his mother that he looks back on fondly. But if he died old, his parents would be long gone. So I think these two are constructs onto which he's projecting other aspects of his mental illness by making his mother crazy, hearing whispering voices, giving his dad a lot of sympathy for Jake. I wasn't too sure about the significance of the paintings in the basement. That's one of the things I really didn't know what to make of, but if anybody has any ideas, I'd love to hear that. There really is nothing trivial in this book, though. And thinking about this all retrospectively at the end, even the physical state of the protagonist is a parallel for the death throes of Jake in real life. She cuts herself, and over the course of the story goes from cold to uncontrollably shaking. This fact and the fact that the investigators say it probably took hours for the body to bleed out makes me think that this piece of writing was written by Jake as he lay dying. I thought that was really smart. The author in an interview said that it actually took him 3 years to write this book. And you can really sort of smell how much effort went into it. There are a few other things in this book I wasn't really sure about. Firstly, the caller. I couldn't decide what the significance of the caller was. So I looked up what some other people think, and I actually found one really good explanation that I was pretty happy with. That it's a constant reminder of the question the thought experiment is asking. And it's the objective part of Jake that's not in the construct. Looking at it from outside, pushing him again and again. Answer that final question. Answer that final question. Answer that final question. Creating more and more stress and tension and pressure to choose as the story goes on. There's only one question to answer, says the caller. And it really could be one of three things or three questions simultaneously. What are you waiting for? Are you good or bad? That the old woman asks him in a flashback memory as a child that somehow traumatized him. And the answer to the titular statement, do I end things? The other thing I wasn't sure about the significance of was the nightmare flashbacks to the tall, thin man standing outside a window waving in at the sleeping child. The only meaning I could really assign to this is that maybe it's a repressed memory of an event of abuse, which was a trigger for mental illness and the subsequent lifelong struggle of Jake. It's a very sad book with pervasive themes of loneliness and inadequacy, but I liked it a lot. I love books that make me feel strongly the whole way through them and trick me at every turn. This book's really staying with me too. I mean, I finished it and I'm still coming up with things I like to say and things I think about it. At the very beginning of the book, there's a line that says, maybe I should have known how it was going to end for us. Maybe the end was written right from the beginning. So for my first read-through of this book, I'm going to give it 4 stars, but I think the second read-through is going to hit incredibly differently, so I may go back and sort of change that based on how I feel with the second read-through. But I'm going to watch the film this week. I'm going to tweet about all the differences, so make sure you follow me on Twitter, which I'll link down below. Thank you so much for watching this review. Tell me what you thought of the book. Tell me what you thought of the book in relation to the movie. Tell me what you're reading at the moment. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. There's more coming as always. I'll see you soon.